Okay, we might get going. Thank you again for joining us this evening for our information session on the Postgraduate Certificate in Creative and Cultural Entrepreneurship. As mentioned, I'm Jane, I'm the recruitment officer here at Tangent, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit this evening about this course. I suppose a little bit about the course, who it's for, how to apply. My presentation will be brief, and then I'll hand you over to Karl Thomas. Karl is the academic lead for innovation and creativity at Trinity, and he's also the lead facilitator on this course. Karl will give you a brief overview of the course, and he knows it much more in depthly than myself. So thanks, Karl, for being here. And we are also joined tonight by two past students. The first one is Miriam Spollen. Miriam was in our January 2020 intake of Creative and Cultural Entrepreneurship. She's the founder of Connections Arts Centre, an award-winning not-for-profit social enterprise, which provides accessible arts and lifestyle programs to the wider disability community, providing them a place where they can learn and grow and connect through the arts. So thanks so much, Miriam. It'll be great to hear from you a little later on in the session. And finally, we're also joined by Peter Baxter, who was again a student on the first intake of this course. Peter is the founder and director of Createschool, a leading provider of creative digital media and musical workshops to schools across the country. So thanks so much, Peter, for joining us this evening. So without further ado, I'll take you through the short presentation. If you guys have questions as I go through, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll get to them after the session or after the presentation. So keep them coming, yeah, thanks again for coming. Okay. So when we look at this course, who is this course for? Well, it's for graduates involved in the creative and cultural industries, those looking to uncover their creative value and seeking to create a sustainable career for themselves. For those self-employed and in employment in creative and cultural sectors and wishing to foster innovation and enterprise within their organizations. And for creatives looking to upskill, for those that have the skill or business idea but lack the business knowledge. What does this course offer? Well, it offers a level 9 qualification from Trinity College Dublin, and that's 30 ECTS, 30 credits. It's a unique combination of entrepreneurial skills, presentation and communication skills, teamwork and leadership skills, access to networking opportunities with potential collaborators, mentors and investors, skills to start up or develop a business, a range of career supports within Trinity and professional one-to-one project mentorship. The course themes. Well, this course is broken down into 3 modules. The first one is innovation and creativity. Module 2 is creative and cultural enterprise development. And module 3 is career pathways. How the program works is, well, it's delivered part-time, online and in person, hopefully. That is subject to government guidance and Trinity policy on social distancing, but hopefully, as I say, partly online and in person. Tuesdays and Wednesdays in the Dublin, it's going to be in Tangent, Trinity Ideas Workspace, so in with us on the 2nd floor of the business school, and in Galway on Tuesdays and Wednesdays also, but that venue has yet to be confirmed. It will be on from 6 p.m. till 8 or 9 p.m. For 19 weeks, starting on the 18th of January next year and going on until the 8th of June 2022. So the teaching and learning styles, well, this is very much adult learning. It's an experiential learning environment with workshops, masterclasses, group projects, and presentations. Students will work in teams on industry projects hosted by private or public enterprise partners. There are no exams. There are reports, presentations, case studies, some assignment work, reflective work, and peer-to-peer learning. The learning outcomes to expect from this course: assess the skills and abilities to identify a relevant career or entrepreneurial pathway within the creative and cultural sectors, to work effectively in a team or individually within a creative context, to apply creative problem-solving skills to challenges identified relating to an industry-relevant project, to communicate and interact with multiple stakeholders and establish professional multidisciplinary networks, and evaluate the process involved in bringing an idea through to implementation. So very hands-on, very practical skills coming out of this course. This next slide just looks at some of the people that we have worked with, some of the organizations we've worked with in some capacity in the past, whether that's host projects or bringing them in for a panel discussion and so on. But some names I'm sure that you'll all recognize there on the screen. Moving on then, how to apply. So all applications must come through springboardcourses.ie. The closing date for this course is the 8th of the 11th, 21, so the 8th of November. You need a statement of interest, which should be approximately 500 words. You need a CV, detail how your skills and experience match the course. A transcript, so a copy of your level 8 honours degree. If you don't have that, you can still apply as an RPL, which is recognition of prior learning. You need 2 written references. For the eligibility details, well, if you're unemployed and in receipt of a social welfare payment like PUP or job seekers, then a recent receipt or details of your online banking to show that you're currently in receipt of that. But if you are in employment, let's say, a recent pay slip, or if you work for yourself, maybe a letter from your accountant stating that you are self-employed, something like this. And then finally, proof of residency. This is only applicable for those self-employed or in employment, and we need to see documents across 3 years within the last 5 to show that you've been living in the EU for at least, as I say, 3 of the last 5 years. So if you have any questions around that, really do come to me at springboard@tcd.ie. I can come back with any questions that you might have around that application procedure. So what our students say, I'm not going to read all of these, but just to give you a sample, you can read through yourself. Denise French says, "Thank you for your inspiring lectures. It was great to see that not all business is focused on one type of result. It resonates in particular with many of us creatives." So we do get some really fantastic feedback from this course. I'm going to hand you over very shortly to Karl, who can talk a little bit in more detail. But as I say, keep your questions coming in on the chat or the Q&A, and we can answer them as we go through, or if you have something to put to the guys on the panel, we can do that as well. So thank you for your time. And Karl, I'll hand over to you and just stop sharing.
Okay. Yeah, cheers for that, Jane. Well, yeah, as we basically said, we've broken this down into 3 separate modules. I do a lot of delivery across the first module. It's challenging, and we aim to challenge, and that's a big part of, I suppose, the journey on this space, because it's not just about reinforcing some of the tropes that are kind of grow up around what creatives are and how creatives make money, and how creatives engage with enterprise, social or otherwise. It's about basically providing you with a mindset as much as a skill set that allows you to go out and basically tackle the world and challenge some of those elements. I will say, just on what Jane was saying in there, in module 1, rather than engaging with host companies as we did in the last iteration, we're going back to the earlier iteration, in which case you guys will build companies. And we found that to be a really valuable tool for this cohort in particular across this course, because many of us won't necessarily be taking our creative skills into the workplace, although that's certainly something we look at, but we'll be using our skills to build different types of enterprises as well. And a part of that can be around thinking of ourselves as sort of, because a lot of us in the creative space tend to work, and when I say a lot of us, I also have creative practices as well. I'm very much in that space. Essentially our own company, our own brand in there, and we will be talking about quite a bit of that across module 1. That host company piece, or the company piece that we're going to be working on, I think is incredibly valuable, because it does to a degree throw you into the deep end, but you are very definitely supported in that. And what I would absolutely push is that, okay, I'm there as a facilitator for learning, but as Miriam and Peter will talk to you about, you probably learn far more from the people you share this space with than you will from me. And I completely encourage that, and I welcome that. I learned quite a lot on these courses as well. Across these courses, we have creatives, but I'm always very careful to recognize that we're not just dealing with creatives, we're also dealing with people who work in the cultural space. And that requires a different element of discipline, different type of engagement. But again, that peer learning is extremely important there, because as creatives, as artists, as musicians, as sculptors, as ceramicists, as from this really wide spectrum of engagement. You're also dealing with potential buyers of your products and services who are working in those cultural spaces and facilitating in those cultural spaces. So there's that really nice capacity for a kind of a cross-pollination of ideas and thinking that you're exposed to in this space. And I can't emphasize the value of that enough. Again, it's not just me that you're going to be learning from or any of the other facilitators. There's huge opportunity to learn from the other people that are present on the course. And genuinely, you will be dealing with some and engaging with some just phenomenally talented people. I've been hugely impressed by what people have done before they've arrived on the course, while they're on the course, and then what they've gone on to do with what they've learned on the course. As I said, it is challenging. I always sort of flag the fact that I'm extremely comfortable with other people's discomfort. That's part of what I do in that space. And there can be stages on the course where we're talking about finances, and you're talking about marketing, and you're talking about branding, and using language that maybe we're not always exposed to in the creative space. I've also lectured in fine arts, and I know certainly that people graduate in those courses. I've had a lot of students come back to me with the now what. It's a big leap, and I tend to think of this course as that nice jumping off point between a fine arts experience in terms of an academic experience, or a fine arts experience as a sort of a solo entrepreneur, where maybe we don't necessarily have all of the skills, and this is that nice bridging point between all of your phenomenal talent and capability in that space, and then we talk about how you can potentially package that and bring it to a new market. So yeah, I mean, right away through the course, from day one right until you leave, you're part of a community. And as I'm sure Miriam and Peter will tell you, I don't really let that community dissolve when you walk away from the space either. Not because of me, but because of the people that you're going to meet on the course. And we find ways to integrate every year with the other years, whether that's through other platforms as well. So it's not that you just learn from each other, but you will potentially learn from the people who've come before you as well. And it is very much, which is sort of part of that creative space around building community and a community of support and facilitation for your ongoing learning. So I suppose I can keep talking, but I'd be happy to respond to any questions, or if we can maybe bring Miriam and Peter in as well.
Yes, I think Peter hasn't joined the call just yet, but Miriam.
Okay.
So maybe Miriam could speak a little bit to her experience of the course from a student perspective. Hi, Miriam.
Hi,
hey, Miriam.
How's it going? Sorry, I'm just changing my screen. I can't see. Hi. Now I can see you.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good. I'm laughing. What's the one thing you said there about making people, you're comfortable making other people uncomfortable.
Extremely.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that one. You definitely did that to me. That's one thing I won't forget. But the best thing you ever did to me, really, because as part of the course, one of the things I hated was pitching, and I've had to do a lot of it in the last 12 months. So thank you for pushing me out of my comfort zone.
You've done it successfully in the last 12 months as well. I think you should tell people a little bit about what you've done across the last week or two.
Well, Connections, we won a Dublin City Social Enterprise Award, it's huge for us, because we only launched officially last April, even though it was something in the pipeline for a while. So yeah, it was huge. And that pitching, it was an online pitch, and I remember the first online pitch that I did with Tangent, where I was having a heart attack and my legs were shaking, and it was only a 2-minute pitch. So I've come a long way thanks to the course. I'm being pushed out of my comfort zone completely. Absolutely, totally and utterly. And that's one of the things I would say, and that peer learning and group work, and that business formation that we did as well. I mean, the learnings from that, working with so many different creatives, the challenges, and it was great crack, but it was hard work, and I learned an awful lot from all of that as well. So there was so much going on.
You guys put together as part of your business that you built. Can you actually tell us a little bit about the business you built and what the sort of the experience of working together, and then the phenomenal pitches that you guys did?
Well, ours was a company called Empathy Square, which is funny because it kind of really, I feel like it was me, but it wasn't me. I swear to God, it wasn't me, but it kind of leads into where I ended up, I suppose. And the idea behind it was pop-up venues where people could connect in the community, people who are feeling isolated and lonely. And yeah, I can barely remember. I know I should. There was 6 of us involved from all different kind of backgrounds, some corporate creatives, yeah, a real mixture of people working together. And so we had to start from scratch with our changing our mindsets was the start of it, really, wasn't it? Because we were all rolling in, you know, to the finish and forgetting to start with our creative thinking and that process of creative thinking and how to develop a business and know your customer and all that. The process was absolutely brilliant and something I had never done before. So for me, it was a huge learning curve. And then that went on. Was that for about 6 weeks, Carol?
Yep. You would have done it across module 1, yeah.
Yeah, and then we went with our final pitches, which was literally the night before the country closed down with COVID. it was our last night out. We all went to the pub, and it was probably our first real night out and our last night out. So yeah, the pitches were great, and actually the creativity around the pitches was absolutely brilliant. What people did and the ideas that came up on the night, and again, even that to see how people really went outside the box for the pitches. I was just amazed at what people did. It was really, it was just such a fantastic experience. And I know going online, we were all a bit like, oh no, we've lost it all now because we missed our experience in Trinity. But I have to say, I met people who I hadn't met before because we split the 2 cohorts together. And I have some friends for life from that online experience as well. So generally, I have no complaints. It was a really good learning experience for me anyway. Yeah.
Excellent. Delighted to hear that. I don't want to take over, Jane, but I see Pete has activated his mic as well.
That's right. Peter is here as well. So thanks, Peter, for joining us.
Cheers,
okay.
Miriam.
I can't start my video. Sorry. I think you need to. Oh, no. Never mind.
It's going.
Hey, Peter.
How you doing?
Peter.
Hey, Miriam.
How are you?
Good. Good. I
So
just
maybe
joined. I missed everything. So I'm trying to play catch up.
Maybe you'd speak a little bit, Peter, as well about your experience of what you're doing now, and maybe tell us a little bit what you're doing now and your experience of the course.
Yeah, okay. So in relation to now, we're really trying to second guess what's going to happen next, but we're doing it from a position of far more confidence and knowledge than we had previously, and a lot of that has to do with the skills I learned on the course. So we're looking at this. The big key word was pivot, that was mentioned so many times, and we were in a position where similar to Miriam's, where we were doing the course mid COVID. I'm not sure what the appropriate phrase is, but mid lockdown really. And so we had to transit. My business had to literally flip overnight. My business would be working in schools, and so obviously we couldn't be in schools. So we had to rethink and redo, and then that began a journey which we're still, my team and I, still on, looking at what online means and what it can mean, and that online to one person is not online to another person. And so that's what we're really doing now. We're working actually with Learnovate on a validation piece, and we're doing further research into online learning. I'd never be thinking of doing that had I not enrolled in and participated in the course last year. Fact.
Been fast forward in our learning over this last 18 months or so. And Peter, when you decided to do the course, or maybe what would you tell a prospective applicant about maybe deciding to do this course? What were you thinking and what made you decide to apply?
Well, I would work in the creative industries, so that was something that immediately piqued my interest. And I would also and have also always been really interested in the cultural element, the cultural dynamic. I believe it's there in pretty much everything that I do anyway, in my professional and personal arts practices. So that got me straight away the title. But if I was anybody, I mean, like Miriam, really good friends from doing the course, and the people came from all different levels of experience, all different geographical areas. People came from all over the country. So that was really interesting to find out about how far other people have come and how far they'll go, no doubt. But it was just a really interesting experience. So I would say that too. It's what you learn, but it's also what you share. Definitely. I think that's the other element. I think it was a really open environment that we could share experiences. But I learned so much. Not just
the peer-to-peer learning is a great aspect of the course, but I'll let you expand on that further, Karl. Sorry.
No, I was going to ask Peter about his experience of the company creation element, because it's quite a big part of module 1, and then maybe how the learning from that permeates through to the module 2 and 3. But
yeah, that was interesting. I felt that because really module 1 for us was all on site. I think it was all on site. Yep. So that actually tied in, I think, with the end of module 1, the transition to online. So I had a lot of time to reflect on what we'd done, actually. And it was an interesting experience, actually. What was interesting was, I'm not going off tangent here, but I found that was also interesting applying those skills online in the next 2 modules, because that's the way a lot of business is done, and actually set me up very well from a lot of project-based work that I'd be doing. But the company creation, yeah, that was an interesting experience. Collaborating with other people was interesting. It was challenging, certainly was. It's down to social and personal dynamics. That was interesting.
You had a particularly interesting group, if I remember correct. There was a lot of very divergent models of thinking in your group, and probably your group pivoted quite a bit actually before you am I right in thinking you guys had the experience product? Was that where you were at?
Yes, we did. Yeah. And we ended up pivoting again, I think, on the way in on the train, I think. So it was interesting. Yeah, we did. We had the augmented reality experience. So there's a learning curve there, but it was good. It was a really interesting experience, I have to say, to try to work with other people. I've run a business for 20 years, so I'm not used to working with other people in the decision-making process. That was really interesting. A lot of artists would be the same because they make the decisions about their creative output. So that was really interesting, challenging. I'm repeating myself here, but it was challenging. It certainly was. Yeah. You have to concede a lot and compromise, and that's not always easy for creative people, but I can't recommend the experience enough to go through that.
I think it's probably worth mentioning as well, Jane, that in module 1, we kind of overlap the learning with the design thinking model. So you're engaging with that empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And I work in a lot of corporate spaces as well. And that design thinking model is an extremely desirable skill set for people to have. And certainly I know from that corporate context that they're extremely eager to engage with a more creative profile of employee as well. So while I would absolutely be pushing the kind of skills that you develop across this course for towards a perspective of this is for you to develop the business you want to develop, you are also developing skills that are attractive in organizations as well. And there's quite a few people who've gone on to probably do sort of a lot of consultancy work with organizations, taking their creative skills and recognizing the value of them in corporate contexts. And sort of likes of Noelle Brown is sort of coaching and communication skills, and Noelle has a theater background. And I know a few other people, Christine Scarry, who was on the last module, is doing something similar as well. So it's not one of the things we push in module 1 is kind of a bit of a skills audit as well, that it's, you're more than just the creative practice you've had in the past. And actually, if you can reimagine some of those skill sets that are there that they do have value in other spaces that maybe you haven't considered because you've been in a very kind of predominantly creative space. I think that's probably an important point for people to take away as well.
If I could add to that, actually, Karl, two things that I've gained from this in professionally. One is to have the language as well. Even the language that you're using now, people are maybe daunted by what that means, design model thinking, and it's really interesting because you certainly do gain an understanding, a practical understanding of what a lot of that language is, and it's something that can feed into how we present our own work and our own business. And also for us, well, for me personally, what it did was, I've always worked in an education space in schools. From doing the course, it made me re-examine through the various activities that we did. We use lean business canvases all the time now in work. A lot of the tools that we use are our default tools, and I've brought it into the organization. And we look then at our audience base, and now we're moving in, we're winning tenders, we're moving into corporate SME, basically a lot of training in that space, and CPD for adults as well. We wouldn't have come near that had I not done this course. Honestly, I don't think so. We stayed within the comfort zone. That was what we were doing. And so, yeah, just worth mentioning.
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that.
Yeah, I think definitely, Peter, you nailed it on that there, the comfort zone. I mean, that's it really. I mean, it completely changed my mindset on every, I'm a different person for doing the course, really, I have to say. It threw me so out of my comfort zone. My mindset is completely different. And yeah, I would say the language and everything and the learning around creative thinking has been so useful in development of what we're doing as well.
I was working with a corporate group today, and we were talking about creativity, and they had never imagined, they probably perceived creativity in that very fluffy, esoteric kind of way that probably a lot of us arrive into this course with. But I push a practical model of creativity, and they were blown away by it, and it sort of opens the door for that sort of marriage between the corporate space and the creative space in a way that, I work with a lot of different creative spaces, and this sort of, some of this business language is quite challenging. I work with the Royal Irish Academy of Music, and they would have initially found some of the language that we use to be maybe, dirty words a lot of the time, thinking about your personal brand and how that potentially impacts your visibility, and then your capacity to make sales or your capacity to apply for tenders. That can be challenging for people to engage with, but I think, Peter, you might have missed it, but as I said to Miriam, I'm extremely comforted with other people's discomfort. And we, it's a journey. We absolutely flag this. It's a journey. It's not about arriving in on day one and learning a list of new words and away you go. There's a growth piece attached to this that is, it's worthwhile, but I fully appreciate the challenge in it. But it's, it's a real shift in thinking for a lot of people, as much as just a sort of an addition of new words and a new vocabulary or lexicon. There's a real growth piece in there.
I guess that talks back to the experiential learning, Karl, and that you're learning because you're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
All these things, and you're applying that design technique.
Yeah, there's no hiding on this course. There's no hiding. I think I said on day one, I will drag people kicking and screaming to, across it. And that's, part of my commitment to what we do on this course, because to me, there's, it aligns absolutely with my value structure, what the people that have, subscribe to this course are involved in. And I want to see them be as successful as they can be as well, because that's important to me as a person. So as a result, I don't allow people to hide, and we do encourage full engagement with that experiential learning piece. And probably the two candidates on the screen will absolutely attest to the no hiding policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But comfort zone, that's circling back to that. That's absolutely true. And I also think one of the things, talking to people subsequently, we have a WhatsApp group. We have a couple of WhatsApp groups, actually. And so whilst we haven't physically been able to see everybody, it's a really lovely buzz and community that's come from the course. And one interesting thing that pops up regularly, or I see, is people put a value on their creativity. You mentioned that when you're talking to the Academy of Music. A lot of musicians or a lot of artists sometimes struggle with that, but I've found that, well, I suppose it's anecdotal, but the people that I've spoken to who are on the course everyone could see how to structure a value, how to price what it is that you do and stand over it and be proud of what you do. And so I think it's a really cultured and ethical marriage of those values together with pricing. So it's commercial, but it's commercial in a good way. Sometimes artists and creative people think that that's a sellout, or it's not. It's not. It's actually putting value in what you do.
There's no shame in not starving. That's the reality of it. I mean, I think the words "What's your budget for this?" is probably ringing in most people's ears, because it's a nice soft
Question number one, Karl.
Yeah. It's a nice soft introduction to that nasty conversation around money, for creatives. But it's a bridge that we kind of work at getting over. But it's part of that journey. But yeah, Peter, question number one.
It's a huge takeaway. I ask it all the time, but I'm just saying it's a huge takeaway for a lot of people. I think I'm not sure if the people who are interested in going on the course this year were a cohort like ours, which say right across the creative spectrum of experience and fields of interest. But that's one thing I think everybody would say, that they definitely would be more confident, and the power of silence, all these kind of things that you learn when you give a price, and how to price your work, and how to ask the question.
What's important about that is, and this is kind of going back to what we do in the course, it's not only creative people who struggle with that. I meet people in all kinds of industries starting new businesses with all kinds, people coming from tech, people coming from corporate backgrounds, professional services, really struggle with that question. And it is part of breaking that myth around creatives that only we struggle with that kind of element. But the reality is most people in businesses do. I remember from your cohort, I don't like dealing with finance. I deal with people who sell financial services who don't like dealing with their own finance. That doesn't make you a creative, that makes you a human being. And that's kind of okay. There's a lot of forgiveness around those kinds of elements across the course, but we don't allow people to fall into that space of, I'm a creative and therefore I tick these boxes of behavior. That's the nudging you out of your, I say nudging you out of your comfort zone, but it's a squarely placed size 9 boot.
But we all stay friends at the end, Karl, and that's the important thing.
We did.
Well, look, I mean, the three of us are still in contact fairly regularly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think probably quite a lot of cohort 1 would be in contact with me as well for different things. So maybe that squarely placed size 9 boot was wearing a slipper rather than a boot, but we got where we needed to go.
I think we were the older group as well, so it was probably a bigger push for us, cohort B were all younger. We were definitely stuck in our mindset, I think, more of our group.
Again, it's the exposure to the other people in what I noticed quite a lot of was that one person would maybe take a leap and then other people would feel more comfortable filling in the gap behind them, and then somebody else would take ownership of the next step. And you see that almost like a relay of learning across the projects. That's fantastic to see, because it's again, as I said at the outset, it's not about learning from me. I'll teach you the kind of the content elements, but you're going to learn so much from each other. The next cohort coming in terms of your capabilities and the kind of redefining the parameters of what's possible for yourselves, and redefining what it means to be a creative who's also running a business and is an enterprise unto themselves, so it's hugely valuable to have that connection, that community piece.
I found that in the later modules too, some of the lecturers, in fact 3 of them I've contacted subsequently and kept in touch with. It's been brilliant. And in terms of different skill sets or elements, professional advice in photography, storytelling, business branding, lots of different elements. So the course also, that's another thing I would say it was a huge takeaway for me.
Fantastic.
People are approachable and helpful.
Yeah, and the other creators in the group as well, even staying in contact with them and getting supports from their, if you have questions about things. Our group are great for that. Like, you can reach out to anybody for any help.
Yeah, I mean, that is the entrepreneurial practice. I think one of the exercises we do is, find 3 potential champions, or, have a look around, see people who can help you with your next step or help you to basically create your vision, you know. And it's, again, it's not something we naturally do as creatives, because you're kind of almost forced into a competitive space at times. And it doesn't naturally kind of feed into the model of behavior of sort of reaching out to people. But your group, other groups that we've worked with across this, who've reached out to people in spaces that have achieved quite high levels of success in the kind of disciplines that they're from. And they're, you know, part of what they've done across the course is basically to reach out to these people who are exhibiting in the Tate and people who are exhibiting in sort of really high level spaces, and ask them, look, how do you get to where you are? I want to be there, you know. And again, an entrepreneurial process that's not always encouraged in the creative space, but we absolutely encourage it.
And people, we often think that, you know, are we bothering people by asking them? People are flattered when you ask them, you know, how do they get to where they are, you know, and people want to share that knowledge. So yeah, that sounds fantastic. Guys, thank you so much. We did have a couple of questions that came in, but I kind of answered them, or you have answered them even just chatting amongst yourselves there. But I might just call out this one from one of our attendees, saying that she doesn't have a degree in the arts area. Both herself and her husband have scientific degrees, but they're both naturally creative, which is how our current business idea of creating beautiful products from storm fallen trees has emerged. This course,
fabulous.
So that is, I mean, that's, you don't have to have this traditional background in the arts.
No, so I think in maybe Miriam and Peter's group, there were people from business backgrounds who have an interest in the arts, you know, and want to be in those spaces. What I would say is that where the arts sort of the kind of the fine art space is heading, they're probably better placed than most people graduating with arts degrees. Or degrees in sort of traditional fine arts. So what they will probably learn quite a lot, and they will diversify the product that they're producing in that space, because they're going to be exposed to such eclectic stimulus in there. So yeah, no, you're in good shape. I wouldn't be worried about that at all.
I don't have an arts degree. In fact, I don't have a degree. I came through, I left school when I was 18 and worked in a completely different industry. I did night college for marketing and business. So yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be daunted by that.
Yeah, no, not in the slightest.
We have another question here. I'll just answer it live, actually. So what is the timetable schedule of online versus in the room? So our plan is that module 1 and 3 will be in person in Dublin and in Galway, because we have 2 intakes of the program, with module 2 being entirely online. Now, the only thing that would change that is if, you know, numbers spike and government guidance says that we should try to work remotely where possible. But that is the plan. So module 1 and 3 in person, and module 2 online. And there's a timetable on our website, tcd.ie/tangent. There was an earlier question just on the fees. So if you're in employment and successful, that 10% fee is €312.50. So it's either cost you that 10% fee or nothing at all if you're eligible and successful in your application. So a wonderful opportunity, Springboard funded, and open now for application. But I would encourage you to get your application in nice and early before the closing date of the 11th of November. If we have any more questions now, I'll just wait a moment or two to see if there's anything coming in on the chat. Make sure we've answered everything. Otherwise, we can finish up very shortly. And thank you guys so much for your time. It's like a mini reunion here.
Yeah, next one's in the path.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Great to see you both.
You too.
Yeah, like great.
Cheers for popping in.
Okay, well, I'm happy to stay on the call for another moment or two, but we can finish up there, and thank you again, and we'll see you very soon.
Good to see you, Jane. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Miriam, Peter, Karl. Thank you.
Thank you.